Hello, welcome to Her Journey Home. I'm your host, Sophia Noel Graniella. My mission here is simple: to hold space for honest stories and conversations that are usually left unsaid. This podcast is for the women in seasons of becoming, rebuilding their lives, reclaiming their voice, and remembering who they were before the world told them who to be. So come as you are, and let's begin the journey home together. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Her Journey Home. I'm super excited for today's episode. This is a conversation I've never had on the podcast before. She's actually a folk herbalist and the tender of the sacred wild. So welcome, Amelia, to Her Journey Home.
Thanks, Sophia. I'm so excited to be here and bring this conversation to the community.
Oh my goodness, me too. And before we get into all of the questions, I really would love for you to take us on a little bit of a journey. Maybe if someone is getting to meet you for the first time, which they probably are, if you can give us a little insight into how you actually became an herbalist, maybe your energy, your work, and what led you on this beautiful plant path.
Yeah, I would love to dive into this a little bit more. So, hello, everyone. My name is Amelia Andrade. Yes, I'm a folk herbalist, and my passion in herbalism is really exploring the world and wisdom of bitter botanicals. I'm the weaver of Darling Dandy Botanicals. Working with the plants that have that bitter flavor, that bitter taste, that bitter bites, which can be really off-putting for some. It's not really a common flavor that we have in our daily meals and our daily diets. And I'm really on this quest to help guide people back into relationship with the bitter botanicals and the ways that they can invite this forgotten flavor back into their palate and back into their lives to really support the body. And I find so much joy in creating spaces for folks to begin to remember and to reweave themselves back into relationship with the natural world. In this relationship with, if we even think about, the food that we eat, those plants that we have for food, our body takes it in and alchemizes and transforms, and they become us, which is so cool that that happens. So how can we come back into this relationship with the natural world and come back into this remembrance that our ancestors knew of seeing the plants as teacher, as guide, as friend, as ally, and really the nourishment and the play and the curiosity that can be found in that space. And I love, yeah, like playing in that garden with people.
My goodness, just the way that you speak about it and your passion behind it and this beautiful relationship you've created with the plants, I think is something that most people have never even thought about or heard
Mhm.
of. And I'm really curious too, like, what was your experience like when you first connected with the plants? Like, was there a moment that you realized, oh my gosh, I need to build this deeper connection, or I'm really interested in learning more about herbalism? Because as far as I know, you were in corporate for a long time. So, how did we get from corporate to herbalism?
Mhm, yes, I was a corporate girly for a long, long, long time. And I was working for a corporate travel company. And in 2020, people stopped traveling. And the company was put on a pause, and there was this notion that we were going to step back for a bit. Everyone was going to go home. The company was going on pause, in the intention that after a few months we would all be back at work. So I didn't ever feel this urgency that I had to be looking for a new job. There was this sense of security that, like, all right, I have a couple months to kind of hang in this way. And then I'm gonna just go back to my job. Like nothing had even happened, which we know is not truly the reality. And so many shifts and life changing, aspects were brought to us from that time and even still continuing today. And so during that pause, I was thinking, well, I can't just really sit at home and do nothing. And what are some hobbies or some interests that I had had over the past few years that I never believed that I would have time to really dive in more deeply to? And one of those was yoga. For years prior, I had had a yoga practice. I had come to the practice from that really physical lens, that it was a workout that I was going to, that I was like sweating out and pushing to get rid of the stress that I was feeling from my corporate job. But I knew that there was so many more layers and to the teachings and the philosophy. And I said, okay, I have this time now, these few months, and I'm gonna take my yoga teacher training. So I did that online for my 200 hours. And there started to be maybe like halfway through, I would say, there started to be this shift in the relationship that I was noticing within myself, the relationship to my body, the relationship to how I was nourishing my body, how I was starting to show up and move through the world. There was this bit of a perspective shift. And I remember even thinking like, "Oh, damn, like when they call me to tell me to come back to work, there's something about this that isn't really feeling that good anymore." And it was this moment that I thought like, "Oh, I actually have a choice in this, that there are options here that when they call me to go back, I could say no." In my mind and kind of, the financial security of it was like, "Girl, of course you're gonna go back to that job." But there started to be this shift, and I now know it to be, for me personally, a heart pull. That's what I call it, that I started to move out of my head, and I started to move into my body, into my heart, and there started to be more curiosity and deeper connection within myself and new things to explore. And I was like, "Oh, I can't stop." Like I've started to pull on these threads and I just want to keep pulling on them more and more and more. And I had had a lot of digestive challenges and discomforts when I was younger. I actually, when I was traveling once, I traveled a lot at that job. I was over in Europe and I had a health concern come up. I thought it was just food poisoning actually. And I remember I called my boss and I was like, "I think I have food poisoning. I'm gonna push some of my meetings, but don't worry. Like I'm still gonna get the contracts. The job's still gonna get done. Like what I came here to do, for the company. I'm gonna, yeah, fulfill those promises that I came here to do." And I remember I felt so sick and I just kept pushing and I was in pain and I made those meetings and I flew home and I went to the doctors and they did a scan, and before I even left they said, "Girl, you need to drive yourself to the emergency room and get your gallbladder removed." And I remember even like laying in the hospital bed and being like, "What the fuck does the gallbladder do?" Like having no idea of this part of my body. And that even started, that was in 2019, and that started to be this kind of wake up call like, "Whoa, I really don't know who I am." So yeah, some of those threads were even starting to weave into my yoga teacher training. And then the decision was made for me because about a month after my training ended, I got a call from my boss and she said, "Listen, we're starting to open back up, but not in the same capacity. We're not bringing everyone back. And so we're going to lay you off." And there was a bit of like, "Oh, okay, well, I've been thinking about this and what this might look like." But then there was still that like, "Oh shit, what do I do now?" And who a little bit of this spiral of my identity was so tied to that title and my worth was so tied to that job, that question of who am I and how do I move forward? And it started to be this excavation, this little bit of discovery in that yoga training. And yeah, I decided to kind of keep pulling those threads, which moved me into a holistic nutritional therapy program, which had a lot of the science of the body, which was really beautiful to start coming into that understanding of how the body works. I like learned what the gallbladder did and how you can now support your body without a gallbladder, which also, yeah, is supportive of a lot of digestion, which is where some of those bitter botanicals come in. They're really lovely for supporting. our digestive system. And it was in there that I started to get a little bit of sprinkle of herbalism. And this was starting to introduce me to more of the spirit of the plants. And I said, oh, there's something here. Like this is really lighting me up. And I'm going to continue pulling these threads. So yeah, that moved into a 2-year herbalism apprenticeship. It's when I'm even thinking of coming back into a relationship with the dandelion. I said that the dandelion is my most beloved plant ally. And I started drinking a lot of dandelion tea in my nutrition program, learning how it can support the digestive system and support the liver and be supportive since I didn't have a gallbladder anymore. And I started drinking this tea daily and started to really notice those physical shifts, that my digestive discomfort was starting to ease, that I was moving through life a little bit more vibrantly. You think about too, even when I had my gallbladder removed and they said, oh, I had asked how I can support my body. And the doctor said, oh, like, you don't need the gallbladder, that you can live without it. But how do you continue to thrive in your body and as you move through the world? So I started to drink dandelion tea every day and really sitting with it and coming into the relationship of how it was supporting my body. And I often say it was the first time that I met the dandelion, but to be honest, I knew the dandelion from a long, long time ago. I think a lot of us did, right? That like childlike wonder of like going out in the yard and seeing the little poof ball and making the wishes. So I started to even shift that language and say I was reintroduced to the dandelion at that point. And then it was moving into my herbalism studies that it really started to bring in, yeah, more of the energetics, more of the subtleness, more of the spirit, and the ways that you cannot just be kind of consuming the plants, but how you can really start to slow down and to listen to the plant, and that the plant has lessons and it has wisdom and it has stories, and the ways that we can start to open to receive those in a really beautiful way.
Oh, I have goosebumps.
Yeah.
Everything you described, I'm like, "Oh my goodness." I literally imagine my little child, my inner child, just, like, running around, frolicking in the field, making the wishes, and I'm like, "Wow," it took me all the way back, and now I drink dandelion tea around my period because it
Mm,
helps me with, again, digestion and my
mhm.
bloating and
Yeah.
overall just, like, soothing, but I had never thought about actually being in a relationship with the plants, and so this is such a beautiful perspective shift for me, and I'm sure the women listening. And I have so many questions, so I'm like, "Which way do I even go?" But I would love to know, like, for someone that's listening to this and they're maybe new to herbalism or new to dandelion, what are some ways that they can start to build relationships with these plants instead of just drinking the tea? Or I know you also like to shift the language from like taking it, but to really being in communion with the plants.
Yeah, yeah, and thank you so much for bringing up that language shift as well. Simple way is just like you said, start to even just shift that language into language that's more relational, that invites in that relationship. Sat with dandelion, I communed with dandelion, I worked with, I meditated with, I hung out with dandelion today. It begins to, yeah, bring in more of that relationship. And we know that our words hold that vibration, right? Like our words hold so much of that power. It always is this really nice practice of starting really slow and really simple. I think it can feel really overwhelming, even for people that are curious and you don't really know what plants to turn to. I also think that unfortunately, our society places a lot of fear around the natural worlds, around the wilds. And it's that fear of like, oh, could I take this? What will happen if I take this? Oh, there are plants that are poisonous and I don't know which is which. And there's this way to also bring in the ethical harvesting and the honorable harvesting if we're going to be harvesting them. And I always say, yeah, start slow, start simple, and simple as in pick one. In my herbalism studies, we would offer a tea meditation with a couple plants the first of the month, and we would pick one based on that meditation to journey with for the month and start to really intimately get to know them and work with them in all different forms. Looking if they're growing outside, going and sitting with them and seeing how they're growing. Looking at artwork about them. I made a whole Spotify playlist about dandelion songs because there are actually a ton of them I would be happy to share. But yeah, like you would start to court them, how you would start to court and be in a relationship with a friend. Like go grab coffee with them, hang out with them, build that relationship. And in the category of herbs, if people are thinking about starting to work with herbs in this way, I always suggest the nourishing herbs. A lot of them are wild weeds. So we have dandelion, nettle, red raspberry leaf, oat straw, burdock, chickweed. These plants are really, really nutritive rich. They are also considered to be these wild weeds. So they tend to grow in huge, like untamed patches. If maybe you know some of them and you have them in your yard, you can kind of understand this. And they are really these generous and abundant gifts from the earth. And a lot of them are accessible, they're affordable, they're just growing right outside in our yard, again, as long as we can make sure that we're having that proper identification. One of my favorite ways to start to build that relationship and in sitting with the plant is to do a tea meditation, a really simple tea meditation. And you can start to awaken your senses to the plant. So if you make an herbal infusion with one of these plants and taking some time to sit with it and really offer it your presence and your attention. So some ways that you can do this is maybe you close your eyes and you hold the cup up to your nose and you take some really deep breaths and start to connect with the fragrance of the plants. I also like to say it's like sharing breath with the plant, right? Like our in breath is the plant's out breath. And our out breath is the plant's in breath. I remember my herbalism teacher said that once, and I was like, "Whoa!" Like my mind was blown. So how can we can start sharing breath with the plants? I know this might sound really silly to some, but it's also a beautiful way to start building relationship. Introduce yourself to the plant. If I have the plant, in a tea, I say like, "Hello, I'm Amelia, dandelion, nettle, burdock. It's so nice to sit with you today. I like welcome you. I welcome you to come into me and whatever messages that you want to share. I'm open to receiving them for you to move in the places most in need of nourishment." And then as we drink the tea, taking that moment again to connect with the senses, to notice the flavor, the taste, the sensations as we drink the tea down, beginning to notice in the body where we're feeling the plant most. And maybe that's a sensation. Maybe with dandelion, you notice that your stomach starts to growl a little bit. It's like activating your digestion. Maybe, if you're drinking a plant like skullcap, it's like, "Oh, I've noticed that some of the tension in my shoulders is starting to kind of release." Maybe it's, a plant like mullein and you're like, "I just noticed I could take a deep breath." It's turning inward and seeing how the plant moves in your body and becoming more aware of that. It is this embodied kind of somatic practice of working with the plants, which was really new for me even before I started my herbalism apprenticeship. There's a difference between me just showing you a picture of a plant and telling you about its properties or where it grows or the different parts to be worked with, which is necessary information and beautiful information to have that understanding of awareness. But then there's that difference, that deepening, the subtleness of knowing in the body what that plant feels like for you, how that plant moves in your body, and bringing that body awareness, and then noticing, okay, when I'm feeling really kind of stressed out, when I turned to this plant, it really started to offer me some like soothing, some calming. So I'm going to turn to that plant, to that friend when I'm feeling that. oh, I really had some trouble getting to sleep last night. And I turned to this other plant and it helped to relax me and some of the agitation from the day. And I fell into a more easeful sleep. Okay. So like that's the plant I'm going to turn to when I'm craving or desiring that a little bit more. Yeah. It's just to be able to come into the body, to know how the plant moves and feels in the body. There's real empowerment in that, in putting the place of the healer back into you. Yeah.
That's exactly what came to mind as well. Like after you were explaining everything, it's so gorgeous. And I can feel like this sense of like, like an exhale, honestly.
Mhm.
I think it's your voice as well. It's beautiful.
Oh,
But I was just thinking it's such a beautiful practice of presence and coming back
Mm,
into the body. Like when you said the somatic experience, that's what I was thinking as well. It's like, oh, we get
mhm.
to like create this deeper relationship, not only with the plant, but within ourselves as well. Like activating our senses and how we feel, and then noticing, like, okay, this herb like really helped me with this. And then being able to then focus on those and build that even deeper relationship with that specific herb. And you mentioned like a bunch of different plants and herbs and some that I have never even heard of. So I can imagine that someone listening to this also has a similar feeling of like, okay, but how do I know which to start with? Because I know you
Mhm.
mentioned starting simple, picking one, which I love. That's what I'm going to do. For me, dandelion has had amazing effects, so I think I'll start there. But for someone else, maybe they have digestive issues, maybe they have insomnia, maybe they have other things that they're navigating. Is there a resource or a book or some way that they can learn, maybe online as well, of which herb to really start with and to build that relationship with?
Yeah, yeah, and I also suggest looking up different farmers in your community. A lot of farmers, I know, like the CSAs even near me, some of them have like herb packages. So if you're connecting with local farms or going to farmers markets, connecting with local farmers there to have some insight and even to the plants that are growing in your area. Looking up if there's local apothecaries, visiting them. I would definitely go back to I kind of mentioned it briefly, but these nourishing wild weeds, so nettle, dandelion, burdock, red raspberry, chickweed. These are so nutritive in the way that they really can start to fill the depletion that so many of us are feeling in our bodies. I think that sometimes even when we start to think of herbalism, we do kind of look to it as, I'm not sleeping well, so what herb's going to fix my sleep? I'm having the digestive issue, so like what herb do I do for that digestive issue? Starting with the nourishing wild weeds because they fill us back up and our reserves of our vitality so deeply from kind of the root in the bottom that some of those other kind of discomforts or feelings of agitation or kind of a dis-eases, like the dis-ease, the ease of being in the body, it starts to harmonize that and bring a little bit of balance to it. So I always suggest working with the nourishing wild weeds first to start to, yeah, kind of fill back up on that vitality. Cause you'll be surprised that, you'll think that maybe it's a sleeping plant that you want to be working with. But if you start to work with the nettles, it's like, oh, I'm just these vitamins and minerals that I've been so depleted on are now being replenished and I can start to rebuild within the body and that has the effect on maybe some of those sleep concerns that you had. Yeah, so they start to bring more harmony into the body for sure.
I love that you said that because I feel like we do live in a world right now where we are so focused, or at least in like the pharmaceutical world, right? Where we're so focused on like, what can I take to fix this? And so it sounds like what you're saying, which I love this perspective shift, is like instead of focusing on taking an herb to fix something, right? Like the sleep or the pain or whatever it is that you're navigating, it's like first building that relationship and focusing on vitality. And then when you're replenishing, it can just immediately like it can help those things that you may not even realize.
Yes.
Instead of like leaning on it to be like, okay, this is going to be my savior and this is going to fix this. It's like build that relationship first.
Yeah, yeah, it's coming back to that, coming back to the root,
Mm.
nourishing the root, nourishing the root, nourishing the root. And I think that's something, yeah, definitely, we do see what you were just speaking to that, in kind of the Western culture, it is like, okay, well, what's the problem and just fix that. But there's always that root that like there's never that discovery or the excavation or the time spent to like get a little bit more curious and into like the deeper, and how can we nourish that through my yoga teacher training and through my nutrition program and through my herbalism studies, there has been this theme of like deep, deep nourishment, deep nourishment. What can I do more to nourish? I think sometimes we approach health as restrictive. What can we take away? We have to take away, take away, take away. And in my kind of path and the lineages that I hold is nourish, 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 more nourishment, more nourishment. And as we build that more nourishment, as we fill that vitality, those reservoirs, all the other shit that like doesn't feel good anymore, we start to notice what is nourishing and we start to notice what isn't. And that like what isn't, it yeah, right on.
Ah,
It more
so
easily falls away. It more easily falls away. That more easeful approach instead of kind of that, yeah, sometimes like harsh, restrictive, cleansing, purging. You gotta like strip it all away until there's nothing left. And it's like if we can just fill with that nourishment, that
mm.
vitality, there's more clarity that comes from it. And everything else just
So
yeah.
beautiful. Gosh, my word for this year for my health is nourishment. So this
Yeah.
definitely deeply resonates. And this also, you said purging and some other things. And so it's got my brain thinking a bit like when people hear plant medicine, right? At least for me, before I started to learn about herbalism through you, my first thought was like ayahuasca, right?
Mhm.
Because I've sat with ayahuasca a few times and I think a lot of times people hear plant medicine and they immediately go to the psychoactive plants. But meanwhile, we have all these beautiful herbs and plants growing right in our backyards. So I would love to know like how have these plants and these herbs really shaped the way you relate to yourself, the way you create, the way you live your life? Like, share a little bit more about that because I don't think some people realize how powerful the things that are literally right in front of us can help us.
Yeah. Yeah. And it definitely can. For me, it's about this being in this relationship in a way that it's a daily devotion. I think we've kind of, talked a little bit previously, and you had your episode on, yeah, you sitting with ayahuasca and in there. Yeah, I think sometimes we're led to believe that in order to commune with, in order to be open enough to receive the medicine and the wisdom and the stories that the plants want to tell us, that it has to be from this like altered consciousness out of reality. Yeah, psychoactive state. Potent lessons to be learned with working with those plant medicines, because I have also sat with them and I humbly bow down to them and to those that tend to them and tend to that relationship, and work as bridges to bring, yeah, the human and the non-human together in that way. It is, yeah, that thought that it needs to be this intensity, it needs to be this sharpness, it needs to be trekking into the jungle and into the depths of those dark nights of the soul and sitting with that discomfort and almost this like no pain, no gain type of mentality sometimes as we're healing. And also still kind of this sense of urgency, this, if I sit once and I'm done. Like I sit once and I'm healed. And there's also with some of these plans that there's still even this inaccessibility and an affordability of sitting with them as well, for you and I to have the privilege of being able to take work off, to buy plane tickets, to have a passport, to even travel, to sit and be in ceremony with some of these plants. And we also know that it's not a one and done. And a lot of the work happens when you come home. It's the integration that's happening after that as well. And when we can start to see that there is a little bit of a gentler way, that there is also a softer way, that there is a way that we can be in daily devotion with the plants that, yes, are growing right outside of our door, that there can be fun and there can be play and there can be curiosity. Yes, both are there can be so many lessons that can come from both. And we also, if we think of sitting with some of these plants like ayahuasca, that it isn't for everyone, that we know that depending on, what medications that you're on, depending if you're working with other substances, depending if you have medical conditions, that can also make it inaccessible. And I think too that sometimes these plans, and again, I bow humbly, humbly down to them, but they can take us more out of our body, which can be really disorienting and can be really discomforting for many of us. And it's like, how do I come to land back in my body? And even for that, sometimes for those weeks and months after you go back home and it's like very, very disorienting. And these wild weeds, like I had mentioned before, they start at the root. They bring us back into the body to have a stable, rooted, grounded foundation for us to feel, yeah, that vitality to then move through the world in this way. And yeah, it can be softer, it can be playful, it can be expressive and creative, and it can be, yeah, that daily act of devotion, again, for that nourishment. And I think it also, when we start to come into awareness of the plants that are growing right outside, we moving through our life with such urgency that really narrows our view. That there is this like forward rush momentum. And when we start to slow down, when we start to turn inward, when we start to take pause, take breath, it widens that perspective and it can allow in so much beauty. So much beauty. It also can allow in a lot of discernment. I think when we're moving with such urgency, we're also very reactive. There's a lot of emotional reactivity and we can pause, we can get curious, we can actually take a moment to look around and see what is around us. Yeah, just personally for me, I've been living in my house now for maybe like 13 and a half years. And just over the past few years, as I started really my herbalism journey, every, spring, summer, fall, I go out into my yard and there's been new plants that I find. And I didn't plant them myself. And it made me start to wonder like, oh, these have been here the entire time. I found, yeah, like wild black raspberries growing, mugwort growing, natto growing, dandelion, of course. I mean, dandelion's always been growing, and chickweed growing, and yeah, some other like wild roses in the back of the land that I'm on. And it was, yeah, just that other realization of, oh my gosh, I finally slowed down and looked and witnessed, and they were like, "Yeah, hey, hello, we've been here. We've been here waiting for you just to, like, take a breath, to look at us, look at this beauty that's here." And when we start to notice that, it has this call in us to tend it, to want to see more of it, to be able to, if we're working with the plants, that are just growing right outside our door, if we're tending that relationship, then we're tending the relationship of the land that we're stewarding as well, which is really, really beautiful and so needed. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm so glad that you touched on the widening of the lens because I do think that so many of us, including myself at many points in my life, was always just in this rush and the go, go, go. And it really does keep that lens so narrow, and you're not even seeing the beauty that's right in front of you. And I just recently came back home to really have this season of my life that's a lot more slow and intentional and
Mhm.
yummy and nourishing. And that's something I've also noticed is like I'm seeing things that I never even was aware of before. And I'm like, my goodness, the things that I used to just completely miss out on because I was constantly like so laser focused on getting to this end destination or like the next achievement or whatever it was that I was on. And I'm like, wow, just to like take that breath and to pause and to slow down. And I think this is what you call moving at Earth's pace,
Right?
right? Beautiful. So I guess that leads me into another question then about this Earth's pace is if someone finds that they're constantly on this like autopilot, hamster wheel, like the lens is really narrow, which I think so many women relate to. Like, how can they begin to really take this pause and start to move at Earth's pace?
Yeah. Oh, I love this. Yeah, and I love talking about moving at earth pace. It really when I think back even on my herbalism apprenticeship, there were so many incredible gifts that came out of it, but I kind of always keep coming back to like, okay, it was this earth pace that was like really like the gem that pulled everything back together and how I relate to myself, how I relate to the earth and seeing that earth again and the plants as teacher, as guide. And I think just to start it, it's beginning to notice more cycle, more rhythm, more spiral, that there is this, if we look to nature, and I know we're both in the Northeast, so right now we're in like the frigid cold, there's snow on the ground. I actually am so thankful to live in a place that I get to see all 4 seasons because it really does allow me to like, okay, what is the earth up to today? What's going on out there? What are we playing with? So it's starting to see like, oh, the plants are, right now, if we think about the winter time, it's this time of dreaming, of seeding. We also just had Imbolc on February 1st, which is that cross quarter holiday between the winter solstice and the spring equinox. So now there's starting to be this like stirring, a little bit of this awakening. And then the spring will come and there's that bloom that happens. And then the summer is like the ripeness and the nectar and the juice of life. And we even feel that, right? We're like buzzing around like bees, like we're going here and there and like celebrating and outside in the sun. And then the fall comes and it's that harvesting, it's that celebration, it's that like, okay, let me reflect a little bit, that pulling back, that composting, and then starting to release to go, yeah, back into the earth for the dreaming time of winter and kind of this fertile soil. Like things need to be shed and released and let go to make space for the new to then rebirth again. So we see kind of that cycle in nature. We see cycles in the moon. It's bringing in this awareness of like, where in my life can I witness cycles, cycles in the moon? Cycles of, when we're menstruating, the cycles that we hold within us then. I know even for me, when I'm on my bleed, I just wanna be on the couch, like, curled up with a blanket and some warm tea and, like, a heating pad, and years ago, I would have been like, "Oh, I got these, like, HIIT workouts, these, like, pushing, sweating, grinding workouts," and I would always feel like shit after, and it was like, no no wonder why. So, yeah, I take that time to rest. I take that time to rest, and there's this trust in that if I'm resting right now, that's okay. That's the nourishment that my body's asking for. And knowing that that time for, yeah, that like nice intense hit workout is going to come. And when that does come, I'm going to feel good after. So it's starting to, yeah, kind of notice those cycles. I also, in January, I held this container and we connected a lot with dreaming herbs and kind of this dreamscape and yeah, the archetypes of winter and connecting with the medicine of winter and our sleep hold cycles, which we had this conversation. We're like, oh, the 4 stages of sleep that we move through. And I was like, again, that noticing of cycles that are held held within us. And if we can start to get curious about these cycles and start to see some of the medicine that's held within each of them and how we can tend to them and kind of move with them and kind of move in that flow and that rhythm with them instead of kind of this fight or pushing or forcing against it. And I think if we really do get quiet enough, if we really start to sit down, our body knows this. Our body our body holds this wisdom already. If you even just think about like the winter time, like for me, in the morning when it's dark out, it's hard to get up. When I get out of work and it's dark out, all I wanted to do is come home and like snuggle with the blanket and eat some soup. That our bodies know how to do this. Our bodies know how to be in cycle, in rhythm. And the more that we can connect with that, there's more ease in that. And there's more of this remembrance of like, oh, yes, this is how we are meant to be moving. This is how we are meant to be living. And connecting with the medicine of each is how we do show up full and show up vibrant and show up alive, that there's the time for rest, that we need to rest to recalibrate, to rebuild, to regenerate, that allows for us to then show up in that fullness and that vibrancy and how we move in life and how we show up for ourselves, how we show up for one another, how we show up for the earth.
It really is that act of slowing down. And I was thinking about this recently because for years of my life, I was chasing the sunshine and I wasn't actually in a place that had four seasons. And I could just feel like it was this constant movement and I was never allowing myself to slow down. But now that I'm back here and it's cold and I'm in winter, it's like, you're right. I just like, I make soup, then I read my book and I sometimes just lay down and do absolutely nothing. And it's like giving
Mhm.
yourself that time to just recharge. And then you're just so much also more present and more aware. And that's when you get to see more beauty around you. And I think there's really something to say about the cyclical living that I never allowed myself to even experience. And so this leads me into a couple of the last questions here. I know you mentioned that you were running a program in January, and now I know that you have one coming up in March as well when this episode airs. And so I would love for you to share a little bit more. I believe it's Wild Wisdom, which I absolutely
Mhm.
love that name. And maybe just like take us on that journey. Like, what will those who join you learn? And yeah, just take us a little bit more in depth into that program.
Yeah, thank you so much for asking about this. Yeah, wild wisdom. As I had mentioned a little bit, that the dandelion is my most beloved plant ally. And we're going to be starting on April 2nd, is when we're going to begin. But the doors, yes, the doors, or I like to say the garden gate. The garden gate is open now for those who are interested in joining. And it's going to be a 6-week devotional journey with the dandelion. So just the dandelion, I had said before, kind of starting slow, starting simple, right? So really spending this time to have this like love affair with the dandelion and this desire to help us to awaken to that wonder, that magic, the medicine, the wildness that is just waiting right outside our door for us. I was thinking about this just the other day actually, that I feel like I'm kind of, I mean, people have some words for the dandelion. I feel like I am kind of the dandelion's PR person and that I am like doing this refresh rebrand because for so many it is like villainized as this weed. I work part-time at a plant nursery and like the amount of people that come in to buy, yeah, the Roundup, the weed killer, to, they say that the dandelion is like unruly and untamed and so disruptive. And we gotta, get it out of our pristine lawns, and that the lawn needs to be this perfect, field of green, and that there's no color or diversity. And we're gonna get into the whole like history of the American lawn and the status symbol of the American lawn is the conversation as well. But I like to think of like when I think about those parts, that people say about the dandelion, that like bold, rebellious, resilient, unruly, untamed, wild. I'm like, I want that. I want to be that. I think we all need some more of that. And the dandelion shows us, I also think too, like people are trying all their might to get rid of this, pouring poison like into the soil and dandelions popping out of the concrete. Like you cannot keep it down. So we're gonna be, yeah, talking about a lot of the physical benefits of the dandelion and that dandelion's food medicine too. So all parts of the plant are edible. We're gonna work through the root. We're gonna work with the leaves, with the flowers. We're gonna make some herbal medicine. We're gonna talk about the systems of the body that the dandelions support. And then we're also gonna pull in some of the more subtleness of it, but by no means, less than, but the energetics and the spirit of the plants. Because when we can work with plants in intentional ways, we can awaken and kind of call those parts of ourselves back. And we can turn to, yeah, like I'm looking to be a little disruptive. Like the dandelion's shown me how. So calling back, yeah, calling back the wild parts of ourselves, celebrating those wild parts, celebrating what wildness means to you. And yeah, we're just gonna have a lot of fun. And I chose, April to really begin this journey because that's for a lot of us when the dandelions are popping up. So we also get to, go out in our backyards and notice them and see them and work with them in this way. Yeah, we're gonna make like salads and syrups. I've had on my wish list for a couple years. I haven't done it yet, but like dandelion wine. I mean, there's so many ways to work with this plant. And we're gonna make body oil with it and just, yeah, really, really get to intimately know the dandelion and those wild parts that live within us. Yeah, I'm really excited if it's something that's interesting, or sounds exciting or interesting to you. It's also super beginner friendly. So if you've never kind of dabbled in herbalism before, but you're interested, yeah, would love to have you come share in the space.
Oh my gosh, that sounds so incredibly beautiful. Like all the ways that you're going to use the dandelion. I'm like, I didn't even know you could make dandelion wine.
Yeah.
Wow. So this is going to be such a gift for any woman that joins. I will make sure to link this in the show notes along with your Instagram and ways that women can connect with you if they're new to herbalism or maybe they've been learning for a while, but they're just ready to connect with it on a different level. And oh my gosh, this has been truly such a beautiful conversation. But before we go, I always like to end every episode with one question, which is
Yeah.
what is one powerful message that you want every single listener to walk away with today?
I would love to leave with this reminder that being able to connect with, to commune, to be in relationship with the plants is something that's held within all of us. I think for some of us, we hold some of these practices or these rituals a little bit more closely because we have, family, grandparents, parents, cousins, siblings that have worked or continue to work really closely with the plants. And for some of us, that relationship has been severed kind of further back. That's how it was for me. And I know how it probably is for many. And some people are like, I would never be able to do that. But it's something that our ancestors, all of our ancestors across all culture, across all time, worked intimately with the plants. And it's something that is still held and like passed on with love into our DNA. And it's just waiting to be excavated, to be awakened, to be given space, to be given breath, to be given heart. And all you have to do is be open to receive, what might want to come through. So yeah, just that reminder that it is held in all of us, within all of our DNAs. And it's a beautiful relationship to come back into connection with.
Wow, my eyes are so much more open to this concept, and, like, I wanna start incorporating the tea meditation you mentioned earlier into my morning routines and the in-breath and the out-breath with the plant. So, thank you so much for bringing your beautiful wisdom to Her Journey Home, Amelia. This conversation has been so incredible, and I can't wait for the women that listen to jump into your program and to just learn more from you.
It brings me such joy, again, to help kind of be that bridge. Sometimes I like to say, I'm like, I'm waiting at the garden gate. I'm waiting at the garden gate for you with a warm tea in hand. Come on over. We'll open it up. We'll play. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. Make it so much more playful. Bring that inner child in. Meet Amelia at the garden gate. Like, wow, just what an incredible conversation. I will make sure to link everything in the show notes. And for anyone listening to this episode, if you enjoyed this conversation, please go ahead and share it with your beautiful community. Like, rate, and subscribe to the podcast so I can continue having these gorgeous conversations. And again, Amelia, thank you so much for being on Her Journey Home. And I will see you all again next Thursday.